Chris Hensley is a registered representative of Cambridge Investment Research, Inc., a broker-dealer member of FINRA SIPC, investment advisor representative of Cambridge Investment Research Advisors, Inc., a registered investment advisor. Cambridge and Houston First Financial Group are not affiliated.
The Houston Midtown chapter of the Society for Financial Awareness presents Money Matters with your host, Christopher Hensley.
Good morning, everybody. You're listening to KPFT Houston. I'm Chris Hensley. The time is now 10 a.m. We got a great show lined up for you today. 50%, according to America's Psychological Association, is the divorce rate in the United States. It's a whopping 50%. 40% of couples can't identify how much their other half makes. They don't even know how much income their spouse is bringing in. Now, that's according to a study by Fidelity Investments. According to Debt.com, 20% of adults who are married or in committed relationships have secret debt that they haven't revealed to their partners. Our topic today is divorce. The book, which will be released roughly in about 2 to 3 weeks or so, How Your Husband Screws You in Divorce. The author, John Stirling Kinross. We will do a deep dive into the topic of two different ways. One, how to protect yourself in a divorce, but how to bulletproof your marriage to prevent from this when it leads to when it comes to finances and divorce. So please stay tuned. Keep listening. John will be joining us very, very shortly. We'll do a deep dive into this topic. But with that, if you are a longtime listener of the show, you know that we always reserve just the first few moments of the show to kind of give you an update about financial literacy here in the Houston and the Gulf Coast region. I am part of the Houston Money Week leadership team. And we have every April, we have Financial Literacy Month. It's a national month that celebrates financial literacy. Our Houston, our Gulf Coast region version of that is called Houston Money Week. Now, we initially called it Houston Money Week because it took place over just a week-long period of time. We are this year, our 10-year anniversary, and what's gone from Houston Money Week, we still call it Houston Money Week, is a month-long celebration of financial literacy. So we bring financial literacy classes, economic education, financial literacy to low to moderate income, to anybody who has questions, whether it's college planning, whether it's retirement, whether it's how to get out of debt, disaster recovery. Here we are in Houston after the Hurricane Harvey. That's one of the things that we are going to focus on this year. Much, much more. 10th year anniversary, we're seeing this thing grow and grow. And what started out as 10, 20 organizations, nonprofits, now we've got schools, we've got federal government, we've got city government, nonprofits, for-profits, banks doing community reinvestment work. All of these different groups make up the initiative of Houston Money Week. We did meet this week, we met last week. We are going to have a partnership meeting coming up this week. And I would encourage you to go out to the website if this is something that you think you want to get involved with, or if you just want to find out which financial literacy classes are available in your zip code. This website can help you do both. If you go to www.houstonmoneyweek.org. The website is set up where you'll be able to, once we roll into April or lead up to April, you'll be able to put your zip code and it will tell you what financial classes are available. If you're looking for help on your taxes, now I know we're not quite there yet, but as we get closer to April, we do have free tax preparation available through our VITA sites and through our nonprofits, and would encourage you to look at that. If you are a organization, a company that would like to have us come out, if you would like to have us come out to your school or to your professional association, reach out to us. You're welcome to attend the meeting that we have next week. That's going to be at the United Way building. And for more details, go to the website HoustonMoneyWeek.org. With that, let's go ahead and get our guest on the line for today. John, are you there?
Hello. Good morning, Chris. Good morning, Chris and Houston.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us today.
Well, happy to be here.
So I wanted to share just a little bit about you with our listeners. I'll usually give your bio information to them. And now it says that you are a accomplished author. You're a financial consultant that women, married or single, need on their side. You've got extensive experience as a forensic accountant and 20 years of testifying in divorce court under your belt. John, can you tell us just a little bit more outside of the bio so we can get to know you a little bit better?
Well, yes. I'm a CPA, of course, trained in auditing, which led me into forensic accounting, that is, assisting litigators to bring the numbers into court so the judge can make a decision based on something he can hang his hat on, some real numbers. So I provide the real numbers for the courtroom.
Absolutely. Well, and you were mentioned before the show, we were talking just a little bit, and we were on this book is actually going to be coming out here in the next 2 to 3 weeks or so. Is that right? Yes.
We're just doing some fine tuning, and then we expect to go live on Amazon. Yes.
Excellent. Well, let's dive right into it because the topic is very interesting. We've had a couple of shows on the past when it comes to divorce, but this one is one of the difficulties as a financial advisor I have is sometimes when I'm introduced to a divorcee and the process has already started, it's kind of after the fact. There have already been financial mistakes made. And so what I like about what I'm reading so far is that this is some information that you kind of need to know before you go down that road. Let's start with, why did you write this book?
Well, during the course of those 20 years in divorce court, I noticed a trend, and it was that the woman was usually getting the short end of the stick, mainly because the earning spouse, usually the husband in the last 20 years anyway, held all the cards. And if you're holding all the cards, you can hide or manipulate or squirrel away or do what you want with all the assets, you see. So the woman, when she gets into court, has to fight like the devil or has to know exactly where everything is, where all the skeletons are in the closet, or you're moving blind and you don't get a proper settlement. I saw this time after time, and so I thought, well, I think we better tell some stories and see what we can learn from this.
Absolutely. I mean, this is, I can just piggyback on what you're saying. I have seen that situation multiple times as well, and I know that things might be changing as far as who wears the financial pants in the family, but in general, we have seen in the past that men have, a lot of the clients I get, you've seen men having the power position as far as the finances. So how does that play out in the situation that somebody gets a divorce?
Well, if you get a divorce, it's too late. So the book is all about, really, the title of the book on the back cover, it's got I put two titles on it, is Bulletproof Your Marriage. And that's the real reason for the book, is to reduce this appalling divorce rate. And through my telling these stories and pulling out the lessons and saying, this is, ladies, what you have to do pre-marriage, and even if you're in the marriage, these are things you have to do in order to bulletproof your marriage. So, and you're right. The situation is changing where more marriage is becoming more of a partnership rather than head of household and traditional wife. Traditional wife is really no longer. All the safeguards that a woman used to have as a traditional wife are gone out the window, and divorce, no-fault divorce, is the rule nowadays. So anyone can get out of the marriage very quickly, at least in terms of filing a divorce lawsuit. In any case, so what does a woman do on the way into the marriage, and even if you're in the marriage, what can you do? And then, of course, if you're unlucky enough to be in the divorce court, I have all the ways that you must protect your position in the book.
So I definitely want to get to both of those, but maybe it would make sense to start with the bulletproofing part first, so we don't go down that road, and then we can look at, well, if it happens. But if we start with the bulletproofing, how do you secure your financial foundation as a married couple?
As a married couple, you have to toss out the old idea of head of household, etc. Marriage is now going to be a partnership. And what I mean by that is the woman has to be an equal partner in everything financially and otherwise in the marriage. So that basically all the assets that you start accumulating, and that's a natural thing in marriage, don't you think? That as soon as you get married, you start accumulating assets. You're looking forward to buying a house or a condo or automobiles or fridges, all these kind of things, so that everything that you do, if you, particularly a joint business, one of these garage businesses that start out that way, the wife has to have her name on everything. One of the ways to do that is to have a marital trust of some sort, and that means everything that the substantial that the partnership owns, including the husband's or the wife's business, has to be in that trust, so that nothing happens to anything related to financial matters, except that both sides have to be consulted and both have a finger on the button as when something has to be sold or bought or whatever. You see?
I really like that idea of a partnership versus the head of household. As a financial advisor, I will just piggyback on that. I've seen where, couples have entered into this idea with the best intentions. Maybe the man thought he's taking the work away from the wife. She doesn't have to worry about this. But what if that person passes away and that person is not considered a partner? They don't really know what's going on with the finances. It could really leave them in a bind. Can you talk a little bit about that? Well,
that's the whole premise of my book, and that's the whole premise of how to save the marriage. Because if the woman is an equal partner in the marriage, it's going to bind them together closer, you see, and that instinctively they consult one another because they're equal partners. And that brings up something else. You mentioned that what else could happen in a marriage that could split it up other than divorce. Actually, there's about 6 causes for ending a marriage, such as a lawsuit. There's 3 financial disasters that can hit a marriage: a lawsuit, an IRS levy or a bankruptcy. Any one of those three can throw tremendous strains on a marriage. And unless both partners are in on it and know exactly what's going on and have control, and that's the big thing. The wife has to be empowered. Women have to be empowered to have control over the marital assets and to be an equal partner in everything that's going on, so that they're equally consulted and instinctively both partners are joined together, not just spiritually but and emotionally, but actually legally, so that they're both being consulted and both being bound together in this equal partnership that strengthens the bond and keeps the marriage together. The biggest cause of divorce, or the root cause in most divorces, not all, but let's say most divorces, is financial difficulties or financial arguments or financial disasters. So you've got to get that right, and if you get that right, you're going to bulletproof your marriage.
So important. You mentioned quite a few things here. You started with the idea of partnership versus the head of household. You talked about some of the things that can end a marriage outside of just straight divorce. If you're married and you end up in a lawsuit, or the IRS comes in and puts a levy on your home or your bank account, bankruptcy, things that you are on the hook for if your spouse say does that. These divorce, one of the biggest reasons for divorce are those financial difficulties that we're talking about. Do you have a story where you've seen this over the 20 years that you've worked in? I'm sure you do. where you've seen something like this kind of play out?
Well, yes, because the book I tell about 6 or 8. I didn't count them. I guess I should know. 6 or 8 or 10 stories, and each one has a lesson. On that score, yes, there's one tale about bankruptcy. One partner declares bankruptcy, okay, and the other partner says, "Oh dear, well, you got to sort that out, haven't you?" But it's not one partner's problem; it's both your problems, because when you declare in Chapter 7, especially, all the marital, all your assets are thrown into the pot, and the court has jurisdiction over all your assets. So there's a story of a girl who was already well situated prior to the marriage, having a small publication business, and then the husband was in a partnership with somebody, but lost a lawsuit and had her bankruptcy to get rid of the judgment, which dragged in the whole business of the wife. So the next thing the wife knows, the sheriff is almost knocking on the door saying, "This is mine now. You can get out, and I'll just take over." So, what's the defense against that? And if you read my book, of course, prenuptial agreement is a good one. If you have any substantial assets going into the marriage, because it establishes what is separate property. But in this case, there was no premarital judgment, or a prenuptial agreement, I should say. So what do you do? Well, I have checklists in the book, and it says, okay, you can't do a prenup. What you should do is do a statement of financial condition, or just a balance sheet of what you owe and what you own. and list all those assets. Get your accountant to do that. Help you with that. File it with, say, your attorney or with the accountant, and just have it sit there. And that's what saved this woman's business, because she was able to show that I have a statement of financial condition which was notarized and kept in a little box for many years until it was needed. Showed it to the court. Fine, this is yours. Take your business out of the bankruptcy. So saved. That was one success story.
I love that, and you've mentioned that the book actually has some checklist in there for things that you need to be on the lookout or things that you can do. You mentioned the prenup agreement, so that's fantastic. If it's prior to getting married, that and the story that you just told, where the person was able to do that statement of financial conditions, I would just put an asterisk next to that. If you're going through these processes of putting together a statement of financial conditions, if you aren't married yet and you're going through this, if you get any pushback along the way, that could be a red flag. If people aren't willing to disclose their assets prior to the marriage, that to me is a big red flag. And now I would fast forward, because we're talking about getting either getting married, being married, or if we get to the part where there's a divorce, what happens, what I've seen, I've had bad experiences with either husbands or spouses having hidden assets. Can you talk about what that is and how that could affect a divorce situation?
Whether or not you know all the assets going into the marriage, well, that's one of the things. You have to know everything about the other partner. I mean, that's just a natural. You have to know what you're marrying, don't you? So usually one of the relatives of the bride usually does a little investigation, which you can do on the internet, of the future husband, and saying, "Oh, well, look at this," That gives you an initial clue what's going on. But actually, you should know one another's statement of financial conditions, so you know what they own and what's separate and what's community, what both of yours are going to be both of yours in the future, and what is going into the marriage, what is what's your separate. So just a quick word about checklists. You mentioned that about the book. There's checklists at the end of the book to tell you what to do at each stage of the marriage. In a previous lifetime, I used to be a pilot, a carrier pilot, and pilots always operate by checklists, so it was a natural for me to come out and say at each stage, for example, you have a pre-flight checklist, and then you have a pre-takeoff checklist, and then you have an in the air and a pre-landing checklist, and so on. So, same idea is in a marriage. You've got to have a pre-flight checklist going into the marriage, and then when you're in the marriage, you have another checklist. This is what you have to keep doing along the way. So I've got these checklists at each stage of a marriage, and the unfortunate stage of when you're so unlucky as to be in the divorce court, what to do in that as well. So that's what the book is all about: how to bulletproof your marriage through the use of these checklists, so that you're doing everything you possibly can to cement the marriage by making yourself an equal partner, so that both of you are consulting and bonded together in this joint effort, which is how to keep the marriage together, how to bulletproof it.
So I like what I'm hearing, because I'm hearing two different books almost in one book there. The for those of us who are married who want to keep it that way, the positive side are those checklists that you mentioned. It kind of like when you're flying a plane and they teach you to do a pre-flight. Don't even start the engine up until you've checked this, that, and the other. And that you could totally relate that to a marriage. Before you get this far, you want to make sure you've done the financial statements. You want to have full disclosure. If any of those things aren't coming to fruition, if you don't see people being transparent and having full disclosure, that might be a red flag for you. But the second part of the book is if you do end up in divorce court, this book is also a resource for that person. Can you talk a little bit speak on that as well?
Well, if you're so unlucky as to be in the divorce court, yeah, that's quite a long checklist, because of course the stories are all about women who are in a divorce court already. So there's a lot of lessons to come out about that. Just to give you an example, something you may not even think about. There's a story I call Joan of Arc. And, the story of Joan of Arc, she was burned at the stake because she lost her case in court. And why did she lose her case in court? Because she was practically a saint already. Well, she didn't have any friends in court. That's the key. When you go into court, make sure that you're presentable, not only presentable to the court, that is the way you dress and so on, but certain actions along the way affect the judge. The story is that the lady separated from her husband. They bought another, or moved into another house, took the kids, ran out of money. She had to send the kids back to the husband and moved out with a relative. The trouble is the relative was in another state. So when she gets into divorce court, the judge says, here's this woman not even looking after her kids in another state, and she's expecting to get a proper settlement. Well, this woman ended up paying her millionaire husband child care support.
Wow.
Yeah, because she had no friends in court. The judge said she's not a proper mother. So, but she could have turned this around and presented herself a lot better than that going into court. I can remember her saying that he's offering me $10,000 a month for life or cohabitation, whichever comes first. And she said, that's not enough. I want more than that. And the judge is going to give it to me because he's so rich. Well, they get into court, and the judge goes through all this litany of mistakes this poor girl made and says, she can't be a good mother. We're going to not only not give her $10,000, we're going to give her about $3,000 and make her pay half that back in child support.
Wow. So that's definitely an illustration of something you don't want to happen.
Yeah, that's one example, you see, of things you don't want to do. And there's a lot of that in the checklist. Those are the longest checklists, actually, the ones in the divorce court.
Well, John, we are bumping towards the end of the show, so I want to remind listeners, if you're driving right now, don't worry. You can always go back to the podcast notes where we will have a link to John's website, which is John Stirling Kinross. Let me spell that out. It's John, Stirling, Kin, Kinross, all one word.com. That will give you some information about the book, and I understand that it will be available on Amazon within about 2 to 3 weeks or so.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of Money Matters Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, visit us on the web at www.moneymatterspodcast.com. drop us a line on SpeakPipe on the right-hand corner. It will receive any voicemails, questions, thoughts, concerns that you have about the show. In addition to this, we recently launched a Patreon campaign. Click on the Donate Now tab to hit the tip jar and find out what Patreon's campaign is all about.